Welcome, everybody, to yet another episode of the Left Shew podcast. I'm Michael Malloy, coming to you from behind enemy lines in Dallas, Texas. Also joined by my two, Dallas or Texas behind enemy lines, whichever the one that you're cheering for. I'm joined by my two political junkie comrades, Rick Shew. He's also here in Dallas, or he's up in Plano and likes to pretend like he lives in Dallas. And, of course, Jeremy Grolke from Los Angeles, California. Jeremy, how are you, sir?
I'm doing just great. It's bright and sunny here.
It's actually pretty nice here, too, in Texas, although it's just a little bit chilly today, but it's been kind of crappy and raining past other days. Rick Shew, how are you?
I'm great. I was just thinking, actually, when you said Jeremy, L.A., we haven't physically seen one another since I was in L.A. in 2006. That's kind of crazy.
That's correct.
It hits me every once in a while, like, I haven't seen you in years. We need to, not face-to-face anyway, we need to change that. So,
yeah, I need to make a trip to Dallas here this summer, probably.
Yeah, and I need to get to L.A. hopefully for like my Batman on film stuff. Hopefully I'll be coming up for Justice League in November. That's
I hope so,
that's
because
the rumor. That's
the last one of those movies they're going to be making.
That's right. We'll talk about that on another podcast, but let's say no more Zack Snyder DC films. Thank you.
Oh, and I'm not doing any plugs there. I was just chit-chatting about Batman.
All right, sir. So, what's...
All right.
What do you want to talk about today, Mr. Malloy?
Well, I'll tell you what. So we may have some people listening to us here for the first time. If you are curious about who the hell are these guys and what you're talking to, I guess you're about to find out. So there's nothing complicated here. All we are is we're just three progressives. We love to chat about politics, and sometimes we have guests. Sometimes we don't. Basically, we try to chat about politics a little bit different than how most of the major corporate media does it. I think we talk about politics the way that you do when you're talking with your buddies, depending on what side of the spectrum that you fall on. Real quick, though, if you like us, if you enjoy what you're listening to, please, we are basically trying to put this thing all over the internet. We're on iTunes, Left Shew Politics. You can search for us on there. We're on Libsyn, Stitcher, Google Play. You can also find us on Facebook, of course, Left Shew Politics, or on Twitter is Left Shew Politic. Left Shew, by the way, is S-H-E-W, Politic, P-O-L-I-T-I-C. So Left Shew Politic on Twitter.
Yeah, just that S and the Twitter handle was just one letter too many.
It just doesn't let you have those
That's why it's
or?
like that. It's at Left Shew Politic, because they wouldn't let us put that S in there.
What was it, like too many characters?
Yeah, it was just one too many characters. That's okay. I mean, Politic got in, so that's all that matters.
Twitter sucks.
140 characters, whatever.
Sad. It doesn't even make any sense there. Well, so anyway, there you have it. If you like it, leave some comments. If you don't like us, I don't know, write it on a piece of paper and throw it in the trash, right? We don't really care.
But
all right.
And we do need some iTunes reviews, so please write reviews. And if they're bad, fine, they're bad. And then we need YouTube subscribers, okay? So go to the YouTube page and subscribe to our channel, please. Thank you. That's all I have.
So I have been itching all day to talk to you guys about the basics about what's happened this week. We don't even know necessarily what can we hit, like trying to get this thing like within an hour. We had the healthcare bill. We got more Russian espionage going on. We have, I don't know, maybe some dispatches from the zombie land is something I was going to hit, some crazy things that are going to be happening upcoming. But let's go to the first thing. How about we'll stick with the Russian espionage, right? All right. So I think I'm pretty much up to speed on this. You guys can fill me in on anything that I'm missing. But basically, all right, so you have the House Intel Committee, right? Mm-hmm. They are the basic group of guys, and they're the ones who have the intel, all the different intel agencies report to FBI. They have all the information, and they, from what I understand, that's the most nonpartisan thing, really that's the only nonpartisan thing left in Washington, right?
It's supposed to be the nonpartisan thing.
Supposed to be. So David Nunes, Republican, so he's the head of it. Basically, he got some information, at least claims that he got some information. You could fill in the gaps if I'm missing it. That had to do with apparently that the government was listening in. He got verified reports that the government was now listening in to the Trump administration. And so he said that he went to Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House office, Paul Ryan then sent him over there to the White House, and then he reported to the White House and told Donald Trump what he had heard and what he had found, and then he walks outside and he does a press conference. So basically, this is like another crossing of the line where we've lost just a ton of any sort of sense of objectivity like left in there, right? Anything left in that one body of government is I guess basically gone. What was your take on it, Jeremy Grolke?
Well, I mean, I think that what happened was there was a different investigation going on, and somehow some people who were involved in Trump's campaign prior to the election got caught up in that, and so surveillance continued maybe over onto that. At least that's what Nunes was claiming. And then, as opposed to holding that information and sharing it with the Intel Committee, which is what you're supposed to do within an investigation, he went and spoke to the actual subject of the investigation and shared the intel that he had about what was happening, which is something that you're absolutely not supposed to do. So I don't know if that necessarily corrupts all of the integrity of the Intelligence Committee as a whole, but it certainly undermines the integrity of Nunes, who is supposed to be leading it.
But at least to be as an independent body. I mean, it does feel like I was like, maybe they're the good ones and they could do it, but they can't do it, can they?
It ruined any possible perception of impartiality within that body, at least from Nunes. Now, it's completely his fault. He said he made a judgment call, and sometimes you make the wrong call, but his judgment call wasn't based on anything having to do with the integrity of the investigation. He made a political call. He felt like it was better to, what's the saying? It's better to ask forgiveness than permission. You make the mistake that you know is a mistake, and then you apologize for it later. But
yeah, he's a smart guy. He knew what he
knew what he was doing. Yeah, and he absolutely in subsequent days he's absolutely been refusing or unable to provide any actual context to the information that he claimed he had and was then therefore sharing, or how he got that information, who it came from or what the information was. He still hasn't shared it with anybody on the Intelligence Committee.
What's his motivation? I think I've heard different angles on his motivation. Was maybe to try to distract from the healthcare bill, or was it that he's going over there to not be on any sort of line that could be recorded because you don't know who's under subpoena, and he wanted to communicate something directly to Trump? What do you think? Why did he do that, knowing that this would be the impact? It almost pushes us more towards getting an independent counsel, which is the last thing they want. What do you think?
Because we have an incompetent president who's also a bully, and I think that there was a lot of arm twisting. I think that whole thing was set up by Trump. And I think that this guy followed his president's lead, and I think he's realizing, and I'm speculating this like crazy, but I feel like this is a pretty educated speculation, and that I think he's starting to see the folly of his ways, right? He is looking around saying, what the hell did I just do? Because you don't go on national TV and say what he said and then backpedal so aggressively 48 hours later. What changed? Because whatever he claimed he saw was still there, right? So what was it that... What changed that trajectory for him? My guess is that he never really had anything to begin with. I really do think that Trump...
I'm sure he didn't,
What's he saying? But I don't understand what it is that... why did he go? He had to know
the motivation for it, to be honest with you, is what we've seen. It's just more of the same of what we've seen from the Trump administration, where Trump says something ridiculous, and then all the ancillary people around him, all the little lapdogs and the people who work with him in the administration who are trying to maintain some actual form of government and keep things moving forward, have to then go back and find some way to rationalize the ridiculous thing that Trump said. It's
reverse engineering.
Yeah, this in no way actually validates what Trump said about the Obama administration spying on him, but there's just enough context there where there's some overlap where it seems like maybe that's what Trump could have meant, and therefore Trump can then say, that's what I meant. I wasn't ever wrong.
And to build on that, what did the Sean Hannitys of the world say the moment this gentleman gave his little press conference? Okay, it validated Trump. It vindicated Trump. Everything.
I didn't see it. What did he do?
That's my point.
Just said this.
You can look at the Twitter feed. You can watch. I'm talking about Sean Hannity specifically, actually, but his minions as well, AM right-wing radio minions. They all came to Trump's defense and says this vindicates. Even though what he said, let's just say for a moment that it wasn't BS, it was still ambiguous. So for them to even claim that, even if this thing ended up kind of having some truth to it, was ridiculous on its face to begin with. All this is just one giant distraction. And just like Jeremy said, this maniac we have sitting in the White House right now will put out an outrageous lie via Twitter, And then everybody around him is working backwards to try to find something to vindicate it. And the problem is that we are normalizing this BS, right? He can say 3 million illegals voted in an election. Now think about what an egregious claim that is. How abhorrent that would be to our democracy. And yet he
but do you think this Nunez guy believes it?
Well, he produces no evidence, and this is just an example. I don't want to talk about that specifically. I'm just citing another example of something. But my point is that now everybody's working backwards. Oh, well, look, in L.A. County, we found there were 25 illegals registered to vote. And that is somehow synonymous with him saying 3 million illegals voted in an election. And that's what's going on here, is that he can say any outrageous thing he wants to, and then if they can just find something, anything that's tangible,
some small piece of anecdotal evidence.
And I think, going back to your original scenario, I think that's all this was. And they're working backwards to try to find some kind of validation, and they also know this thing's falling apart.
It's falling apart fast.
Listen here. So if Nunez, by the way, so he knows basically all the intel. I don't know. Does the FBI tell him every last piece? I'm not sure. But if it's true that it's burning down, he's got a lot of information. And at least that Representative Schiff said, hey, it's no longer just circumstantial something. I mean, there is now direct links. Why is Nunez? It's Washington. It's a burning ship, yet he's still willing to comply with Trump, requests like that, knowing that how it would be perceived. Like, what in the world was going on there?
Well, it's all just
kind of like, isn't that illogical?
Let's see what he does.
It's just a game of managing perceptions, right? So if you get any information out there, then the people who want to hear that information and who are willing to believe that information are going to cling to that information as validation for what they feel, and then can substantiate their own willingness and bias to say, oh, well, it's right, it's true, Trump's still okay, Trump's fine, because there are going to be people out there who are willing to take whatever information they can, regardless of how well it's backed up or what evidence you can provide or whatever. They're just going to hear it, and now that's what they know. So there's an entire, conservative Facebook feed that you can look at, people who are conservatives and looking for that information. It's filling that feed, right? And so that's what they're seeing. They're not seeing that, oh, Nunez hasn't provided any context for it, or Nunez hasn't given the actual information that he had, or he hasn't shared it with the intelligence community. They're not seeing any of that. All they're seeing is, oh, Nunez says, yes, there is information that somebody was actually spying on the Trump campaign, and no, those people have that, and they'll believe it forever. So that's all that they're trying to do, is you get one little piece of information out there, and it's going to blow up within the bubble that you need it to blow up in, and people are going to hold on to that, and then they continue to trust you. That's all that it is. It's a long-term perceptions game, or they think it's a long-term perceptions game.
Because all he can do at this point, he's at 37% approval rating. Okay, I think that's about his ceiling is probably 40, is about as high as he's ever going to go. And he can go down as low in the 20s if he's not careful. And that very well may happen, and that would be fantastic if it does. But in the meantime, he has to hold that base together, and that is exactly what he's doing. I'm assuming that's exactly what Jeremy means by that, because that's what I took from it, is that he is manufacturing this so people will believe it, that he can at least hold that glue together. Because he loses that base, then his power starts to slip away fast.
Let me try even one further. So I think Paul Ryan, that I don't you have to think like Paul Ryan, by the way, that like all those kind of alt-right people, they were doing whatever they could trying to get rid of you. But I think he's playing along because Paul Ryan 100% knows he's on borrowed time. Like, he is such an ideologue. He's got to get this stuff pushed through Congress because he knows the Trump administration is, I know you don't like me talking about it, but I just think he even knows, this is not going to end well. So I need to get, he wanted to do Obamacare, get his taxes, all his weird draconian policies through the Congress before it happens, because once it's over, it's over. He knows it's going to be a massive swing back.
And you're speaking a little ambiguous terms here, so let's make sure our listeners know what you're talking about. You're talking about, you think that this presidency is going to end before the end of the first term, correct? Is that what you're implying?
I believe that the presidency, I think in all likelihood, I can't say for sure, but I don't think, by the way, that there's always the possibility that the Russian collusion, that could actually cause it. But there's a side of me think even if, let's say that, let's do it like this, that you've got Trump, a recording comes out of him, on a voicemail, talking to Vladimir Putin. Hey, man, I'm using that redneck accent for him.
Did George Bush just become Trump? This guy's from New York.
It's the worst Trump impression I've ever heard. But that wasn't supposed to
we
be
do not
Putin,
do
was it? Because if that was supposed to be Putin, that's even worse.
That's my condescending one, and like I'm like here in the South, and I always like just kind of revert back to that. I mean, I don't know, not my trouble. Okay, so anyway, it's his voice on a voicemail.
That was one of his supporters.
Okay, no, not for this anecdotal piece of evidence here that I'm bringing up. Oh, that's true. Everyone,
we're off track.
Good Lord, let's get through this. But I was just saying a voicemail of him thanking Vladimir Putin for giving him the election. Would do you think like that they would impeach him over that, or they would just kind of redirect like, come on, everybody does this, or whatever one of their million excuses is? I don't think what will get him impeached is the collusion, because it'll be hard to tie it back to him. I think it's what it opened the door to, because I think that he has so many shady business operations and issues like around the world. And once a spotlight's put on it, I think that's what's going to get him, honestly.
Yeah, I think at this point it's more likely that Trump quits than he gets impeached. I think the most important thing for Trump is preserving his ego. And for him, it's going to be a matter of saying, oh, I got out before I wasn't fired, I quit. He wants to get out and say, I got there and I tried to do everything that I could to help, and I was willing to share my genius with these people, and nobody was on board, and Washington was just way more screwed up than I thought it was, and nobody had really any interest in fixing it, and it's not a place that I can waste my time. I'm going to go off and I'm going to do things for the American people in some other way. That's the kind of speech he's going to give, and he's just going to say, I'll let Mike Pence and Paul Ryan work this stuff out. I don't think that there's ever going to be enough information coming out of the Russia thing, although I think there's probably really something there, but I don't think there's necessarily going to be enough to tie it back to Trump, where it seems like Trump was pulling the strings and Trump was making these decisions. There's going to be fall guys at lower levels within the campaign and the administration who fall out. Now, it's going to impugn the credibility of the Trump administration, but I don't necessarily know that there's going to be enough there legally to impeach, or where there's enough political cover for Republicans to impeach their own president. I think Trump's
they are talking about Mike Flynn. Mike Flynn maybe saying like, hey, they've got so much stuff on him. They give Mike Flynn immunity. That's another thing. That lunatic's not like I wouldn't really enjoy seeing him get his, but if they give him immunity, and yeesh, that might be a little bit concerning for.
It's totally possible that he'll be ultimately the fall guy. I mean, it's possible for Trump to say, you know what, there was a Russian mole in the White House, and I found him and I fired him, and it was Michael Flynn, and so now everything's fine. So I think that's certainly a possibility.
I just wanted on the record that I'm the one person on this panel that thinks that we're stuck with this guy until 2020. And my hope is that speech that you just said he could give, Jeremy, I love the idea of that speech. I would almost think that speech would probably be more likely leading into him announcing he's not going to run for re-election. But I think we've got this guy for at least 4 years.
It's possible, but he looks exhausted to me already, and everybody on the Republican side of the aisle looks exhausted dealing with him. It's not even just Democrats. Democrats aren't having to do anything. Literally, Republicans tanked their own health care bill, and we're going to get into that here in a minute, but we can circle back around to that Paul Ryan being an ideologue and trying to force things through because he's doing a crap job of it. Which is hysterical to watch, but everybody really already looks exhausted trying to deal with even that speech that Trump gave from the office. I don't know if he was in the Oval Office, but after the health care bill was pulled, where Mike Pence is standing on one side and Tom Price, the HHS secretary, is standing on the other side, and both of them are just standing there like, I wish that I was not in this shot. I wish that this frame did not include me. I wish this idiot was off talking by himself somewhere, but now I'm associated with every ignorant, stupid word that comes out of this man's mouth. And they're like, you can just see it in their body posture and in their faces. They're exhausted dealing with this human being.
And I tell you what, they are as shocked as the three of us were the night he was elected. They really were. All of them
really?
were. They're like,
holy shit.
He
like
won.
Every one of them to me looks like, you remember that vice presidential candidate Admiral Stockdale? Remember he was in the debate. He's like, "Who am I? How did I get here?" Like every one of them looks like, I have no idea how I ended up in this situation. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, and we're all completely fucking unprepared for it.
Our Secretary of State has more or less admitted that. Like his wife made him take the job. He didn't really want it, and he didn't think, what am I doing here? Who's president? I'm Secretary of what? I want to go back to Exxon.
He does not look one bit like he cares.
He hasn't even done anything. He doesn't even talk to press.
He shuts off the press. He is an enemy to NATO. He's ridiculous. And
it's weird. He's also was the closest American to Vladimir Putin, but that's probably just another one of the coincidences. Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm just being a conspiracy theorist. Blah 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 blah. All right.
So and I know that you're that was just you were just saying that, but I just, for the record, I certainly don't think that you're being a conspiracy theorist or Jeremy. I just think that the three of us are a little bit on different pages. I think that reality is that we're stuck with this guy until 2020. But I would love to be wrong. Love it.
Well, just to close that, I'll say the one thing that makes me that maybe give just a tad bit of peace is, I think, or would give me a little bit of peace, is if I could just get Congress to pass a law saying that the President of the United States cannot drop any nuclear weapons on a proactive strike, only reactive. I think it should be there regardless, but that's the only thing, is that the dude's a little bit nuts, and having the power to literally destroy the world shouldn't be in one man's hands, certainly not Donald Trump's hands. Yeesh. Okay. All right, we're all going to live. We're going to live. Okay, move on.
All right, what's next?
All right, next. Healthcare. I don't know, did you guys see anything on the healthcare? I think, Jeremy, you saw something on the healthcare. All right, so this week, of course, healthcare bill came out. It went down in a blaze of glory because not really necessarily the Democrats didn't do anything, but it was because the Republicans couldn't get together. And, welcome to the party, Mr. Trump, as if government is so easy. Now you got to deal with the Freedom Caucus, the Tea Partiers. That was exactly what, Barack Obama had to try to put up with for all those years. So,
John Boehner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, John Boehner. That's what happens when you put a bunch of lunatics in there.
I want to have a drink with John Boehner. I genuinely,
I do too.
I genuinely like him. I always did. I remember when Obama was reelected, I thought, and I said this on social media, you guys may even remember this, I said Boehner and Obama want to work together, and I really do still believe they did. He couldn't do it. John Boehner's he's a good man, he's a good American, and he was an underrated Speaker of the House. He was up against a lot of BS from a lot of ridiculous people, but those same people, in a twist of poetic justice, are now the ones that have derailed the Trump care, so it's really, really...
We should get together with John Boehner and have a nice Chardonnay and a good cry. It'd be
good cry.
Really cathartic
and
for
then,
the country.
I know that you guys don't like me defending Rand Paul as often as I do, but you have to admit he played a big hand in this too. So bravo to Mr. Paul.
Yeah, but we can talk about that. But there wasn't a single wing of the Republican Party that was really okay with this bill. Objections were coming from both the moderates and the Freedom Caucus. So it's not like one side of the party undermined it. It was just a horrible, crappy bill.
Yeah, it was an argument about that. There was it wasn't about got the better bill. It was, should we shoot the hostage or should we electrocute the hostage? You know what I mean?
And this had nothing to do with health care.
It didn't. It was a budget bill. Yeah,
this was a budget. It was a budget bill. Absolutely. That's A. B. And also, just from a symbolic standpoint, this was just a big middle finger to Obama. That's all this was. These guys have been running on repealing this thing for 7, 8, 9, whatever years. They had nothing. They had nothing.
Yeah. And for 7 years,
nothing. Yeah. They had nothing.
And we all were constantly saying, they've got nothing. Show us what it is. And you'd see them on the talks, we've got this plan and that plan. And conservatives would come to our page or in arguments and be like, oh, no, they've got this, they've got that. And then as soon as it's ready, they had 60 votes to repeal Obamacare or undermine different parts of it throughout the last, 3 years within the Republican-controlled Congress. And then as soon as they actually have the power to do something, they can't even do it once.
Jeremy, they have control over all 3 branches of government.
All 3 branches, absolutely. They can't do anything.
They could not repeal Obamacare.
I disagree that it was just but I disagree that it was just a big middle finger to Obama. This was Paul Ryan's wet dream. This bill. It didn't really have all that much to do with health care, but it had to do with Paul Ryan's ridiculously intransigent ideology of how things are supposed to happen and how government is supposed to run, and almost getting rid of Medicaid and totally reorganizing Medicare. Yeah, and this whole idea of personal liberty, and who cares if it screws 24 million people? It validates my ideology. Paul Ryan acts as if everything happens in a vacuum, and I don't give Rand Paul any credit because yes, he helped to undermine this bill, but he helped to undermine the bill because it wasn't a wet dream enough for Rand Paul. Right. It was Rand Paul's wet dream, but it didn't do anything to even pique the interest.
It didn't kill enough.
I was kidding about the Rand Paul thing, by the way. I was just I do like him on a lot of levels, and I know that annoys you guys sometimes. I just want to take it.
The reason why you do is he gets me sometimes too, is because liberals can just for a small occasion can fall in love with with anybody who's like doesn't care about conservative social values, right? So if you're a libertarian, he's a libertarian, so he's not like too big like on abortion. He's more for gay rights and things. So you're like, oh, he's like somewhat reasonable. But when you look at his economics, like he is just as bad. He's worse than the rest of them.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with that. There's a lot of things about him that don't work. But what I've always admired about him is that he will walk the walk. He'll get with Cory Booker and he'll go to poor black neighborhoods and he will talk to them, really truly talk to them, and want to reform the criminal justice system. And that is a really big deal to me.
Yeah, he absolutely does.
Right.
But anytime
so
he
there's
does
a lot
that,
of
he ends up saying something stupid that reveals the fact that he's completely ignorant about what the actual problem is in these communities and how these people's lives are actually affected and negatively affected. Great. He wants to reform the criminal justice system. He wants to, reform pot laws, right? And that's greatly affecting the minority communities, but he doesn't really understand what is actually how poverty actually impacts these communities, how poverty is self-reinforcing. He still plays a lot of bit of the politics of blame where poor people are their own worst problem, and that's just not acceptable.
So
let's move on from Rand Paul. I could actually poke holes in like 3 things you said, but we can do that for another time because I don't want to talk about Rand Paul too much on the show. I mean, Malloy, you're the host. Michael, sorry. I call him Malloy.
There you go.
Michael Malloy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Michael Malloy. Thank you.
Michael Malloy. Sorry, we go way back. I call him Malloy, but he's Michael. I'm gonna get there. But I would like to actually, if it's okay with you guys, let's kind of circle back to healthcare for just a second too. Is that
Gotcha. No, I'm on the same page too. So let me throw something out there at you.
Okay. Go for it.
So let's answer the question: why did it fail? I mean, this is something. I'll tell you what. 3 months ago, all of the Republicans would have voted for this thing, right? I think
not this bill.
I think they would have. Here is what I'm open to hear your ideas. You know what the difference was? Indivisible. So Republicans, like liberals or progressives or hell, just regular people have not been showing up to talk to their congressmen for the past several months, or for the past many years. So if you're in Congress, basically you're going to fundraisers, or you're maybe seeing other local constituents that you agree with. Now they're like, these are people in Congress having to talk to people. They're not just statistics, and they're not just boogeyman poor people that are going to be thrown off health care. Who cares? Let the free market fix it. It's completely different for them. It's real to them. They've talked to people who are going to die if they do anything to remove that health care. So the Freedom Caucus certainly didn't give a shit about those people, but it's kind of like the more, I don't even know if I can call them moderate, but the other Republicans did finally have to deal with reality, and they couldn't pull that out from underneath them. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that there are a great many moderate Republicans who are like, there's this guy from New Jersey, I forget his name because nobody ever heard from him until this week, but he's a Republican congressman in a district that Hillary Clinton carried by 40% from New Jersey, right? Nobody holding that position is going to vote to restructure Medicaid in the same way. They're not going to go on record with that because that's ultimately going to be used against them. Now, these votes are tracked. Part of the problem with this bill is that people didn't want to have to vote on it because they didn't want to be on record dismantling Medicaid, because they come from districts where there are a lot of poor people, and right now they've convinced many of those poor people that voting Republican is in their best interest. But as soon as they start taking away their medications and their trips to the doctor, that's going to be a lot harder. So no Republican was going to vote to restructure Medicaid at any point. Like, they might have had some sort of entitlement reform in much minor ways, but not a moderate
and if
Republican.
you're a Trump voter, like what is your reaction to that though? You know what I mean? Like, I can't debate. It would take us forever to get through like why in the world people believe Trump. But okay, so you believe Trump, that he was going to fix health care and was going to help you out with all these things, and then they proposed this. How are you still on board with him for, okay, they didn't get it through, now we got to move on to the next thing? Well, he literally was going to throw you off health care.
And those same exact people, Michael, are also the same people that were using Obamacare, hated Obamacare, but really liked the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, right? I know.
And so once that surfaced, like, oh, wait, it's the same thing? Oh, wait a minute, you're going to take Medicare away from me? I thought you were only going to do that to the illegal rapist Mexicans. Oh, wait a minute, this is weird. I mean,
I saw some interview online, like it was a woman who was talking about that, and she was like, I think she figured it out that it was Obamacare, but she got on there and she was like, I just wish they wouldn't call it Obamacare. That's the thing. It just puts a sick taste in my mouth. But right. But then later on in the interview she admits though, but the bill actually did save my life. I would have died without it. But that Obama, he's disgusting.
Well, I think that one thing this bill really highlighted for that group of people is the hole in the ideology, where they're beginning to understand the difference between access to health care, in that there's a market where you can buy insurance, and what actual access to health care is, right? So they're like, oh yeah, there's a health care market, but I can't afford it, right? Right now I have insurance and you're going to take that away from me. A lot of people are beginning to see that hole in the ideology that, oh, the Republicans are saying they want access to health care for everybody, but now I see what that actually means, and it doesn't mean something good for me.
It's exactly why the Republicans didn't want to pass, because they know that the problem is once you give the people something, they tend to like it, you know?
Yeah,
well,
they also know in their heart of hearts that this is not nearly as bad as they actually try to paint it. It's in a death spiral. It's this. They know that's all BS. So then when push came to shove, and it became an actual reality that we're about to dismantle this thing, they're looking at each other going, what? Are we replacing it?
Maybe we shouldn't do that.
Maybe we shouldn't do this. And here's the thing. Obamacare has a lot of problems. I've never personally... I love Obama. I supported him enthusiastically twice.
Big step forward, yes.
But I've never been a big Obamacare cheerleader, right? I was glad when it passed, when the Supreme Court upheld it, and a lot of that, to be honest, was just political hackery on my part. I'm like, yeah, a win in the plus column for us. We're the good guys, right? And I'll admit that. At the same time, I want to see the bill work better than it's working. And here is an opportunity, by the way, okay? And this is a very important thing for me personally, that the Democrats and the Democrats are, you can hand them the keys to the kingdom and they will screw something up. They're idiots.
Yeah,
all right. So what we need the idiot Democrats to do is, for once, can you not be idiots and really bring to the table proposals that will fix Obamacare? This is their moment, because the bill is the law of the land. It's here to stay. So great. So now let's not just make this look like this is just a back and forth of political football. Bring proposals, and I want them to test this president. Is he serious about wanting to maybe make healthcare better for people, or is he just going to ignore everything that he could do to help fix this bill because he doesn't want to touch the bill? This is their opportunity to bring forth serious proposals, and it's this president's opportunity to listen and actually try to do something to fix this bill. It has to start with the Democrats, though.
Well, I'm not there's two things there. One, yes, absolutely, the Democrats should be doing that. I posted something about that the other day. They need to be putting forth bills that actually have proposals for fixing things that actually need to be fixed. I don't think Obamacare is as big a mess as you do. I like a lot more about what's in it, but ultimately,
can it survive?
I think it can survive, but I'm circling around to that. I think that it doesn't have to start with the Democrats, because in reality, the people who can do the most now to fix Obamacare and make sure that it works the way that it is intended are Republicans, both on two levels. One, it's the Republicans who are currently occupying the administration in the White House, and Tom Price, the Health and Human Services Secretary, and Donald Trump, because there are executive orders that were put out in order to fill some of the holes to make some of the things work a little bit better. And they can start rolling those things back, which is really just like taking an axe to the legs of a table while complaining that the table won't stand, right? So they can not do that, number one.
Yeah, they try to kill you slowly. Yeah, that's a very conservative thing.
I'm going to come back to that. And then the second thing is that the reason Obamacare doesn't work as well as it could, and this is one of the reasons I disagree with Makoviak's quote about if you had insurance, it was a bad deal for you, and if you didn't, it was a good deal for you, is that the reason it doesn't work as well as it could is that because there are so many state legislatures that are controlled by Republicans who are deliberately doing things in their states in coordination with their governors to make sure that it doesn't work. Right. They're not accepting the Medicaid expansion. They're not doing the things that they need to do to set up exchanges. They're deliberately trying to withhold the benefits from people and doing the things that will make it beneficial to have more insurers within their states, so that Obamacare actually does the work the way that it's supposed to.
I agree.
So it's on them really to look at their populace and their population and say, oh, my people need fucking health care and I'm withholding it from them just to make a political point, but now my side is in charge, so we're going to be held accountable for this.
Two quick things on that. That's true. However, if the legislation would have been constructed better, some of that would have been avoided. That's one thing. You can't just dismiss that. Now,
Right, but some of the ways the legislation is constructed where those holes are because they were trying to make concessions to people like Olympia Snowe to get somebody from the other side of the aisle to come over and vote for the bill who ultimately didn't. So they didn't make the legislation the way they actually wanted and intended for it to be because they were trying to get cooperation from people who weren't ever going to cooperate with them. So yes,
well, they were trying to appeal to more like the liberals in the more conservative districts. They also had to move it there for them. I mean, it's not like they didn't win over a single Republican.
I understand it's a tricky, complex problem, but I just feel like we can still blame them for some of this. I mean, it's still their bill.
Yes. No,
but here's the thing. Hold on. Let me just say this. So that's one thing I'll say. Secondly, and Jeremy, I understand what you're saying, and it's true. However, the reason that I think
everything I say is true.
The reason that I think it's significant for the Democrats to do something now is because, first of all, it is very good politics for them to do that.
Yeah. They need to look like the grown-ups in the room.
They look like the grown-ups in the room. It's great politics, and great politics, as you know, is great policy, and vice versa. So that is why I think they need to do it. Plus, when we look back on this time, and when we're talking about 2018 midterms and the presidential election in 2020, and 20 years from now, 50 years from now, whatever, this is a pivotal point in our country's history in terms of healthcare. And this vote, from Obamacare to what happened last week, will be talked about for generations. And I would like for history to reflect on this and say the Democrats truly did do everything they could do to help make this better. Because right
absolutely.
now...
we're on the same page with that, for sure.
And that's all I'm saying is that it's true the Republicans should, but you know what? I don't try to give them advice. I don't root for them very much because I don't like 90% of their policies. Right now, we're supposed to be the good guys. We got to step up, and these guys got to bring something to the table.
Yeah, if we don't put something on the table right now, by the way, I mean, we do have open doors. Like this is an opportunity to win like a lot of those people back. We can start turning the tide.
Absolutely.
Something has to be on the table.
Absolutely.
Bernie Sanders is going to put something on the table probably next week, maybe the week after that, but it's going to be single payer, which I'm excited about. I like the idea of single payer. I'd like to see how it's structured and how it's constructed. But I think ultimately what we're going to end up with is some compromise where we don't end up with single payer, but we probably got some sort of a public option and we have more control. We're probably going to open up the idea of buying across state lines, which is a completely moot point because it's not going to do anything. But you're at least going to get that legislation probably in. And I think that we're going to start moving slowly towards a single-payer system. And ironically, it's not because Obamacare is so popular and people are like, oh, well, if this is work, let's go a step further. It's because the Republicans' opposition to Obamacare is so horrible and such a train wreck that what's ultimately we're going to keep compromising in the right direction.
It drives me crazy because, like, what really is your opposition? Okay, Obamacare, it was not perfect. Obviously, it's a big first step, but
no major piece of legislation is perfect,
and that's true.
Yeah, but you added.
That's very true.
I'll go to that in a second. But you at least saw that there were the results, right? It's not like that. Maybe the CBO said that good things would come of it, but a lot of people got on there. Why are they so committed to this ideology? Like, literally, you saw the CBO, and you can go on the airwaves and say, oh, the CBO is full of shit, but you saw 20 million people are going to get kicked off of health care.
Because their argument was this.
Being for the American people?
Well, their argument was this. Those 20 million people, they have a card, but they don't really have access.
They didn't have access before.
Right. I agree. I'm just telling you that's their spin on it.
Well, their argument was those people maybe they just don't want health care. So they have a choice. We're giving these people a choice, but the choice is an illusion. It doesn't really exist.
It doesn't exist. And I had an argument the other day with someone about this. He said, I'm just tired of paying for people. And it's a right-wing go-to gotcha thing.
Insurance.
Right? Yeah, right. And I'm like, you have been.
Right.
When people go to the emergency room and they don't have insurance because they're too lazy to get it. And when I mean lazy, I'm talking about the 25-year-old that actually has money and is just too damn lazy to sign up for it, right? I don't mean someone that can't afford it.
Yeah, it's the guy that you used to hate, that you used to rail against forever because he used to pay, like, oh, I'm tired of paying for that son of a bitch. Like, his health care, he should pay for insurance. Like, okay, well, then we fixed it.
Yeah, $300,000 later in medical bills that he's never going to pay. Well, where does that go? Where does that
absolutely.
Money get it goes on. That's us. And it's all semantics. And just like everything with them is that way, right? We don't like the individual mandate, right? Yet at the same time, I mean, what was proposed?
We believe in personal responsibility until you actually require it, and then that's socialism.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's all. Honestly, that is to circle back to Michael's question earlier about what is their actual opposition to the bill. No, it's twofold. One is it's Obama, right? Anything that Obama was going to do, they were going to oppose, despite the fact that 90% of the initial proposal from Obama and the Democrats on the ACA was originally Republican and conservative ideas. They were going to oppose it regardless because it was the Obama administration and they were trying to undercut it. The second thing is that they can use the word socialism, and they know that their base is going to have a very negative, visceral reaction just to the word socialism, regardless of what the actual consequences are. They just think socialism is bad no matter what, and that allowed them some level of political posturing.
All right, so on that, we're running out of time. I wish we could do a 4-hour show. Let's dive into one more quick topic and just see what you all think. What's next? Like, I don't. So obviously, I think that they face a lot of headwinds going into healthcare. You got people that you're going to kill if you do that, and they're all showing up at your town halls. But where do we go? Are we going to go to tax cuts because people don't really directly right away see the feeling of that? Are they going to try to do the wall? Like, what can they get done? Are they going to try to get something done, or is it just going to continue being the shitstorm where no legislation gets passed?
They're going to do tax reform in school.
They're going to try tax reform. They're not going to get that done either.
I think they're going to get that done.
They're not.
I think they will. I hope.
Like, how do all the deficit hawks even deal with that? I mean, like, they're going to add a bunch of money to military spending.
Absolutely. What are they going to suggest? What their wet dream of tax reform was wrapped up inside this healthcare bill. So the same ideology that they brought to this healthcare bill, they're going to bring to tax reform, and it's going to be just the same train wreck clusterfuck that this was, because you're going to have different wings of the party. For as much posturing as Republicans make about, oh, you have to cut these taxes and you have to cut these programs and you have to do that, when it really comes down to it, the moderates recognize that you can't do all of that. You really can't. You've got to get in power and you've got to sort of govern from the middle. The moderates actually recognize that. The people way over on the right-hand side of the party do not recognize that. They are absolutists. They literally want to tear down government, and you're going to have to try and find some compromise within the Republican Party first. Again, the Democrats aren't going to have to do anything. The Republicans are going to implode on their own.
Is there an actual cause of effect that I'm not aware of? I mean, I think
there may be a
talk
cause
about that.
And effect. I don't know about a cause of effect.
Okay, and edit point moment number 49. Okay. My question is, as we go back from the grammar Nazi asshole, what happened? Why are they sticking to those certain policies? Is there really now in the past 35 years any anecdotal evidence to say, like, lowering taxes on rich people actually does spike the economy? I mean, like, in the long run, I mean, you even look at like states like in Kansas, in Oklahoma, it's not working. When do they move off of this?
Well, they'll point to places like Dallas and Houston and the state of Texas, for that matter, and they'll say, I mean, we have one of the best economies in the country. The Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex does. So does Austin. So does Houston. All three do. It's a coincidence they're all in Texas because low taxes, no regulations, et cetera, et cetera. I understand that there is some truth to some of the things that they talk about. I'm not a far left progressive person in terms of the economy. Sometimes some conservative ideas for the economy do work, but very few do. And when they mesh it all together and they say, for instance, with what Trump is proposing right now, let's add $55 billion to defense. Let's cut taxes, and then presto, everything's going to be okay. We're going to shave off 3% of Meals on Wheels. We're going to cut off funding for PBS, arts programs, etc., that are just nothing. Isn't that
like less than not even a half or even a quarter percent? It's just like just anecdotal bullshit.
It's not even serious. And there is no math in the world, no matter how trickery you get, that can make those numbers work.
Yeah, it's like a household. They're like, oh, we're going to buy 2 new Mercedes, and in order to afford that, we're going to stop buying Kool-Aid.
Right.
Why are they? What's their deal with dumping all that money into the military anyway? Like our military, like,
just
are
posturing
they still
again? It's just posturing.
Yeah, but what does the military think at this point? I mean, I like after like the botched raid in Yemen, like if you're a soldier, you're on the line, you're like, wow, I guess there is a big difference when we have an idiot who's just kind of like willy-nilly, like, yeah, go do a mission.
Look, I don't have an issue with that. I mean, I hate that did not go well, and I hate that we lost. We lost one person, right? I mean, it's one too many, but I'm just trying to remember.
Right. It was one SEAL, but it was like
that's terrible.
Yeah, but but a bunch of children and everything. That's why you can't just authorize any mission. You just can't bomb just anything though, unless we're a bunch of monsters.
I don't fault Trump for a failed mission. That's going to happen. He's going to. Some things are going to work, other things are not. I'm not.
I don't either. I don't fault him for a failed mission.
My issue with him on that is how he responded to it. And his whole thing, well, I didn't approve this thing. This was already on my desk when I got here.
Yeah, well, the response was bad, but this response was indicative of the process as a whole. Like, I don't fault Trump for, if you send somebody into battle, soldiers are going to die. It's just going to happen, whether you have a Republican or a Democrat, and sometimes you need to send soldiers into battle. But what I can question is the process of the decision-making and how the raid was planned and what the go-ahead was given and all of that stuff. So I can question that. I don't, sometimes things go wrong, but I can question the process that Trump brings to everything and the administration brings to everything. And what happened in Yemen is just indicative to that.
I think it brings me back to the same thing that I've always had an issue of, the two different perspectives of the right and the left, where they kind of they approach it as, send the military in there and we're all military and just everything military. But my thing is, look, we need to use the military sometimes. It's an awful just fact of life. We got to go in and we got to kill people at times. But you better be, every time, you need to be damn cautious and damn careful, because it's not only like just a lot of innocent people that have nothing to do with this on the other side of the world that are caught up in it, but you're also talking about these are American soldiers and you're making decisions on their lives. Be careful, be prudent, take your time, and be sure they are not just pawns in your political game. These are human beings fighting for our country. Right. Shit drives me crazy.
And when other people die, this notion that I think God just created Americans or something. I don't like innocent people being killed either. And in Muslim
what side do we stand on?
Women, it's just, are we a humanitarian, or are we just like American absolutists? What are we? Well, I care about people.
Do you know who you want to know what the difference? Like, I wish that this is not possible, but you see as okay, so now we had all the Republican congressmen who who are now not willing to necessarily kill all the old people and people on health care because they had to face them in the town hall. It would be the exact same thing if there was some way for people to actually now have to go over to the Middle East and see the results of bombing and killing and all the collateral damage that happens. You would not be behind it if you had to actually look at dead children in the streets from American bombs. You would say, wow, we need to be a lot more careful.
That's totally true, but just to play devil's advocate, that's why we don't vote on wars. Somebody has to make a decision even when there's a hard decision to make. And so just the fact that there's collateral damage, I mean, war is hell, but sometimes war is necessary. I guess ultimately what it comes down to is whether you believe American exceptionalism stems directly from our power or the fact that we have that power, or is American exceptionalism how we use that power? And I think that using it judiciously, using it when it's necessary, and using the humanitarian things and making the decisions properly is what the moral part of it is what makes America exceptional, and that's where American exceptionalism comes from. But right now, the conservative war hawks that we have in place, that's not what they think.
Yeah, I mean, like, they're kind of their argument too. I know we got to wind this thing down, but their argument is basically, if they're doing those things, they're doing awful things. They'll torture soldiers and do awful things to them. So if our soldiers get caught, if it's happening to them, well, then we're at a disadvantage if we're not doing the same thing. I'm like, that just is the difference between us. It's like, we're not savages. If somebody's going to act like a savage, it's not an excuse for you to do it. That is the thing that keeps us above. That's why we're supposed to be, this shining glimmer of hope around the world, is because we don't do it. And sometimes it sucks, but it actually is best for us ethically and morally, and for us to remain in that place, like in the eyes of hopefully most everyone.
Well, a lot of times it's just best to remain neutral. I mean, up until, maybe you could say Clinton, or I guess in Vietnam is probably where it started, post-World War II. But in both World War I and World War II, the U.S. stayed out of it for a really long time. We needed major events before we got into it. In World War II, it was the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. And in World War I, it was the sinking of the Lusitania. Up until those things happened, we had administrations that were like, not us, not our problem, you guys deal with it.
Yeah.
So,
right.
I mean, there's a difference in how we've approached the military and our use of the military in the last half of a century as opposed to what we were doing in the century before. Now, our level of power has changed and our approach to the world and what we need and our needs and all those things have changed. So that's a much bigger discussion we probably need another 4-hour podcast for.
Right. Hard issues for sure. Rick, you got anything else on it?
I don't. I think we've all said what we need to say. I have actually about 1,000 things I would like to say, but it's going to just take us in a direction we don't have time to go in right now. So we'll leave it at that. That was well said, Jeremy.
All right.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you.
We will try to circle back on a lot of this stuff, and hopefully it is impossible to do a news podcast, anything about politics with the Trump administration. It is a shitstorm every week, and there's too many topics. So let's hope nothing happens this coming week, anything too noteworthy.
Yeah,
hell, we didn't even talk about the Supreme Court.
And let's wrap this up so we can get this over to our editor, because we've got to get this thing up tomorrow for everyone, so you're listening on Monday. Because if this thing's up on Tuesday, it's going to be old news, because no telling what the hell is going to go down tomorrow with this guy in office.
All right. Okay, so let's... Yeah.
Take that.
Yeah, we'll get...
Take that, Trump.
Trump's a listener. Okay. Let's wind it down with our weekly predictions on what's going to happen next. Rick Shew, would you like to head this off?
Yeah, my prediction this week is I just want to say I think that Joe Kennedy is about to blow up and be a star and could be the future of the Democratic Party.
Interesting. Well, he's I don't know, that redhead. I don't know if America's... We had our first black president. I don't know if we were ready for our first redhead.
Ginger. We can't have a ginger president.
Jeremy Grokey.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a similar prediction. I wasn't going to say Kennedy, but Adam Schiff, I think, is really starting to, make a name for himself. People are starting to recognize him more. He's got a position of prominence right now with the Russian investigation and the Intel Committee, and I think you're going to be seeing a lot more from him in the weeks to come.
He's pretty great.
Yeah.
Have we had a single podcast where somebody didn't beat me to the punch and stole my prediction already? We really got to get organized on this. That's exactly what I was going to say. What could be a small filler in there? Donald Trump is going to be impeached within 3 years. Don't say anything else, Rick Shew. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Hope you all enjoyed it. As we said, we're going to wind it down, but don't forget to like us. Don't forget to review us. Find us on Facebook and Twitter, and we will keep chatting about politics. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of our Left Shoe Politics podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Left Shoe Politics. Follow the Facebook page at facebook.com/Left Shoe Politics and the LSP website, leftshoepolitics.com. Search for our channel on YouTube, Stitcher, and Google Play.